The street is still bathed in the soft amber of a Santa Isabel dawn. A single lamppost flickers, casting a fragile glow on the cracked sidewalk. The air carries the faint scent of rain-soaked earth and the promise of warmth from a bakery just waking up. Inside, Emily Rivera moves with quiet purpose, her hands dusted with flour, knead dough with a rhythm that feels like a heartbeat. The oven hums a low hymn to the morning. She's alone but not lonely. Not yet. Outside, the world is slow to stir. A stray dog curls up near a shuttered storefront, and the wind tugs at a forgotten newspaper, sending it skittering across the pavement. Emily pauses, her eyes catching something or someone through the fogged-up window. A figure hunched and still sits on a bench across the street. He's there every morning like a shadow stitched to dawn. An old man, his coat too thin for the chill, his hands folded over a walking stick. She doesn't know his name. She doesn't need to. Emily reaches for a paper bag, the kind that crinkles softly when you fold it. She places a warm loaf inside, sourdough crusty and golden, still steaming from the oven. Next to it, she tucks a small cup of coffee, black. No sugar, the way she imagines he might like it. She hesitates, then slips in a napkin. On it, she writes nothing. Words feel too heavy for this moment. The bag is her message, her quiet offering to a stranger who never asks. She steps outside the bell above the bakery door, chiming faintly. The air bites at her cheeks, but she doesn't rush. Crossing the street, she moves like someone carrying a secret, her steps deliberate, her breath visible in the cold. The old man doesn't look up. His eyes are fixed on the ground, on some invisible weight that keeps him anchored there. Emily sets the bag beside him, careful not to disturb the silence. She doesn't linger. She doesn't wait for thanks. She turns back to this bakery, the hem of her apron catching the wind like a flag without a country. This is how it begins. A small act unnoticed by the world. A loaf of bread, a cup of coffee, a napkin that says nothing but means everything. For 10 days, this is their ritual. Emily bakes. She crosses the street. She leaves the bag. The old man takes it, sometimes with a nod, sometimes with nothing at all. They don't speak. They don't need to. The bag is their language, the bench their meeting place. It's a quiet understanding, fragile as the morning mist. But on the 11th day, something changes. The street is no longer still. The dawn is no longer soft. Emily is at the counter folding dough when she hears it. A low rumble like thunder rolling in from a distance. She looks up, her hands stilling. Through the window, she sees them, 4 black SUVs, their engines growling, their tires chewing the pavement. They stop in front of the bench, sharp and sudden like hawks landing. Men in dark uniforms step out, their boots heavy on the ground. The old man is gone. The bench empty, but the air feels thick, charged with something Emily can't name. Her heart quickens. She wipes her hands on her apron, leaving streaks of flour like comet tails. The bell above the door chimes as she steps outside, her breath catching in her throat. The men are talking, their voices clipped and low. One of them, a tall figure with silver at his temples, turns toward her. His eyes are sharp, not unkind, but piercing, like they could see through her. He steps forward and the world seems to hold its breath. "Emily Rivera?" he asks, his voice steady. "Official." She nods, her throat tight. The street once so familiar feels foreign now. The lamppost flickers. The stray dog is gone. The newspaper lies still, pinned beneath a tire. And Emily, standing there with flour on her hands and a question in her eyes, feels the weight of something vast and unknown pressing down on her. Santa Isabel is a town that holds its secrets close. It's not a place of grand gestures or loud declarations. It's a place of quiet routines, of faces, you know, without needing to ask their stories. Emily has lived here all her life, in a small apartment above the bakery her mother once ran. The walls are lined with memories, photographs faded at the edges, a recipe book with her mother's handwriting, a chipped mug that still smells faintly of chamomile. Emily is 32, but her hands carry the wisdom of someone older. They know the dough, the heat of the oven, the weight of flour in a measuring cup. They know how to create something from nothing. She wasn't always a baker. There was a time when she dreamed of leaving Santa Isabel, of studying art in a city where the lights never dim. But when her mother got sick, those dreams folded themselves away like a letter tucked into a drawer. Emily stayed. She learned the recipes, the rhythms, the way the bakery could be a heartbeat for a town that sometimes forgot how to feel. She didn't resent it. She loved the work, the way it grounded her. But there were moments late at night when the ovens were off, and the silence was loud when she wondered if this was all her life would be. The old man on the bench was not part of her routine. Not at first. She noticed him one morning in early fall when the leaves were turning and the air carried a bite. He was there day after day, always in the same coat, always with the same stillness. He didn't beg, he didn't speak, he just sat, his hands folded, his eyes distant. Emily watched him from the bakery, her curiosity softening into something else. Compassion, maybe, or recognition. She knew what it was to carry a weight no one else could see. The first time she left the bag, she didn't plan it. It was impulse, a sudden need to do something, anything to bridge the gap between her warmth and his cold. She didn't expect it to become a ritual. But the next day, when she saw the empty bag folded neatly on the bench, something shifted. She baked again. She crossed the street again. And so it began, this quiet dance between a baker and a stranger, a dance no one else noticed. For 10 days it was perfect in its simplicity. Emily didn't ask for his story. She didn't need to know why he was there or where he went when the sun rose higher. She didn't care that he never said thank you, that he barely looked at her. The nod he sometimes gave was enough. The empty bag was enough. It was enough to know that for a moment each morning he wasn't alone. That he wasn't hungry. That someone somewhere saw him. But Santa Isabel is a small town, and small towns have eyes. People began to notice the florist across the street wiping down her windows would glance at Emily with a raised eyebrow. The delivery driver unloading crates would smirk and mutter something about charity cases. A group of teenagers passing by with their phones filmed the old man once laughing as they posted it somewhere online. Emily heard the whispers, felt the stares. She didn't stop. She didn't explain. She just baked, folded the bag, and crossed the street. Because to her, it wasn't about them. It was about him. On the 10th day, the old man looked at her. Not a nod, not a glance, but a real look. His eyes, clouded and tired, held something Emily couldn't name. Gratitude, maybe, or memory. He reached for the bag, his fingers trembling, and for a moment their hands were close, not touching, but close. Emily smiled, a small thing. Barely there. He didn't smile back, but he held the bag a little longer before setting it on his lap. That was enough. The 11th day broke everything. The SUVs arrived at 6:47 a.m., their engines cutting through the dawn like a blade. Emily was behind the counter, her hands deep in dough when the sound pulled her upright. She saw the vehicles, the men, the sudden weight of their presence. The old man wasn't there. The bench was empty, the bag she'd left that morning untouched. She felt a pang, sharp and unfamiliar. Where was he? Had he left? Had something happened? The questions crowded her mind, but there was no time to answer them. The man with silver at his temples was crossing the street, his boots loud on the pavement, his eyes fixed on her. Emily Rivera, he said again, standing now at the bakery door. His uniform was crisp, his posture rigid, but his voice carried a warmth that didn't match the scene. Behind him, the other men stood by the vehicles, their faces unreadable. The street felt too small, too exposed. Emily nodded her hands, clutching the edge of her apron. "I'm Colonel James Hargrove," he said, removing his cap. "We need to talk." Emily's breath caught. The air smelled of coffee and flour, but it felt heavy now, like a storm was coming. She glanced at the bench, at the untouched bag, at the empty space where the old man should have been. Her heart was a drum, steady but loud. She didn't know what this was. Didn't know why they were here. Didn't know why her name was on this stranger's lips. But she knew in the way. You know when the world is about to shift, that nothing would be the same after this. The bakery door swings shut behind Colonel James Hargrove, the bells chime swallowed by the weight of his presence. Emily Rivera stands frozen, her hands still clutching her flour-streaked apron. The air inside the bakery feels too small, too warm, like it's holding its breath. Outside, the 4 SUVs loom, their engines silent now, but their menace lingering. The bench across the street is empty, the paper bag untouched, its edges curling in the morning breeze. Emily's eyes flicker to it, then back to the colonel. Her voice, when it comes, is barely a whisper. "What's this about?" Hargrove's face softens, but only slightly. He gestures to a table near the window where the morning light spills in, painting the wood in shades of gold. "May we sit?" he asks, his tone polite but firm, the kind of voice that expects compliance. Emily nods, her legs moving before her mind catches up. She pulls out a chair, the scrape of wood against tile loud in the quiet. Hargrove sits across from her, his cap resting on the table like a relic from another world. He doesn't speak right away, instead he studies her, his eyes tracing the lines of her face as if searching for something he already knows is there. Emily's hands twist in her lap. She's not used to being seen like this, not used to being the center of anything. She's the baker, the one who moves through Santa Isabel like a shadow leaving warmth in her wake. But now under Hargrove's gaze she feels exposed, like a page torn from a book she didn't know she was writing. The silence stretches taut and heavy until she can't stand it anymore. "Is he okay?" she asks, her voice breaking on the word he. She doesn't say the old man's name. She doesn't know it. But the question carries the weight of 10 mornings, 10 bags, 10 quiet nods across a street that feels a world away. Now Hargrove leans back, his fingers interlacing. "He's gone," he says simply, and the words land like stones in Emily's chest. Gone. Not left. Not moved. Gone. The finality of it steals her breath. She opens her mouth to ask more, but Hargrove raises a hand, gentle but commanding. "Let me explain," he says. "That's why I'm here." The days after the 11th morning blur into a haze of routine and absence. Emily wakes before dawn as she always does, her body moving through the motions of baking, measuring flour, kneading dough, stoking the oven's fire. But the rhythm feels off, like a song missing a note. She still prepares the bag each morning, a loaf of sourdough, a cup of coffee, a napkin folded with care. She crosses the street, her steps slower now, and places the bag on the bench. She waits a moment, her eyes scanning the shadows, hoping for a familiar silhouette. But the bench stays empty. The bag stays untouched. By the third day, the bags begin to pile up. The coffee grows cold, the bread hardens, the napkins flutter away in the wind. Emily doesn't stop. She can't. To stop would be to admit that he's truly gone, that their ritual is over. She tells herself he might come back, that he might have a reason. A story she doesn't know. But the emptiness gnaws at her, a quiet ache that settles in her bones. Santa Isabel notices. The whispers that once buzzed softly now grow louder, sharper. The florist, wiping her windows, shakes her head as Emily crosses the street. "She's wasting food," she mutters to a customer loud enough for Emily to hear. The delivery driver, unloading his crates, laughs under his breath. What's the point? He's not coming back. A group of teenagers, their phones glowing, post a photo of the untouched bags with a caption that stings. "Local baker's charity fails." Emily sees it on her phone late one night, the screen's light harsh against the darkness of her apartment. She closes the app, but the words linger sharp and cold. She doesn't explain herself. She doesn't fight back. She bakes. She crosses the street. She leaves the bag. Because this isn't about them. It's about him. It's about the nod. The empty bag folded neatly. The moment when their eyes met and she saw something, gratitude, memory, humanity flicker in his gaze. She holds on to that moment, like a lifeline, even as the town's judgment presses in. Upstairs in the apartment above the bakery, Emily finds her mother's journal. It's a worn thing, its pages yellowed, its spine cracked from years of handling. Her mother Elena was a baker too, but more than that, she was a storyteller, a keeper of small truths. Emily hasn't opened the journal in years, not since the funeral, not since the weight of loss made every memory feel like a wound. But tonight, with the ache of the old man's absence heavy in her chest, she needs her mother's voice. She sits on the floor, the journal open in her lap, and reads by the light of a single lamp. The words are familiar, but they hit differently now. Elena wrote about the war that swept through Santa Isabel decades ago, about the hunger that followed, about the way people survived by sharing what little they had. One entry dated 1973 stops Emily. "Cold. I gave half our bread to a stranger today. He was a soldier, young, barely older than my brother. He didn't ask for it. I didn't ask his name. But when he took the bread, his hands shook and I saw it, shame, gratitude, all mixed together. People say we're poor, that we can't afford to give. But no one becomes poorer by sharing bread. The ones who forget how to share, they're the ones who go hungry in a way they'll never understand." Emily's eyes blur with tears. She reads the words again, then again, until they're carved into her heart. She thinks of the old man, of his trembling hands, of the nod that said more than words ever could. She thinks of the bags piling up on the bench, of the town's whispers, of the ache that won't let her go. and she knows with a clarity that feels like sunlight that she won't stop. Not now, not ever. The fourth day without him is the hardest. Emily wakes to a gray sky, the kind that presses down on you heavy with the promise of rain. She bakes as always, but her hands are slower, her movements mechanical. She folds the bag, writes nothing on the napkin, crosses the street. The bench is a graveyard of her offerings now. 3 bags, their contents spoiled, their purpose unfulfilled. She sets the new bag down, her fingers lingering on the paper. She wants to say something, to whisper, "Come back into the wind," but the words don't come. She turns away, her shadow long and lonely on the pavement. That afternoon the bakery was quiet. Too quiet. The usual customers. Mrs. Delgado with her order of cinnamon rolls, Mr. Perez with his daily croissant are absent. Emily wipes down the counter, the rag moving in slow circles when the bell chimes. She looks up expecting a familiar face, but it's a stranger. A woman mid-40s with sharp eyes and a phone in her hand. She doesn't smile. "Are you? Emily?" The woman asks, her tone clipped. Emily nods, her stomach tightening. "Yes. Can I help you?" The woman doesn't answer right away. She taps her phone, then holds it up, showing Emily the screen. It's a Facebook post shared dozens of times with a photo of the bench and its pile of bags. The caption is cruel. Santa Isabel's baker thinks she's a saint, but all she's doing is littering. Maybe it's time to stop the show. Emily's face burns. She wants to look away, but she can't. The woman's eyes are on her, waiting for a reaction, a defense, anything. Emily says nothing. She sets the rag down, her hands steady despite the storm inside her. "Would you like something to eat?" she asks, her voice calm, almost gentle. The woman blinks, caught off guard. She mutters something about not being hungry, and leaves the bell chiming sharply behind her. Emily stands there alone, the post's words echoing in her mind. Littering show. She thinks of her mother's journal, of the soldier with trembling hands, of the old man who looked at her like she was the only person in the world who saw him. And she makes a choice. The 5th day. Emily bakes 2 loaves. One for the bench, one for the bakery. She writes on the napkin, this time her handwriting small but clear. "For you always." She crosses the street, places the bag next to the others, and walks away. The florist watches. The delivery driver shakes his head. The teenagers film from a distance. Emily doesn't care. She's not doing this for them. That night she dreams of her mother. Elena is young, her hair loose, her hands dusted with flour. She's standing at the bakery counter folding a bag, her movements sure and steady. "Keep going, mija," she says, her voice soft but fierce. The world doesn't always see, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Emily wakes with tears on her cheeks, her mother's words ringing in her ears. The 6th day. The bench is empty. Not just of the old man, but of the bags. All of them gone. Emily stands there, the new bag in her hands, her heart a tangle of hope and fear. Did someone take them? Did he come back? She looks around, but the street is quiet, the dawn untouched. She sets the bag down, her fingers brushing the wood of the bench. It feels warm, like it remembers him. She doesn't know it yet, but the answer is coming. It's waiting in a letter, in a name, in a truth that will unravel everything she thought she understood. The Colonel's visit was only the beginning. The old man's absence is not the end. And Emily Rivera, with her flour-dusted hands and her stubborn heart, is about to learn that kindness, even the quiet kind, has a way of echoing louder than anyone expects. Santa Isabel is a town of small moments, but it's also a town of secrets. The old man on the bench was one of them. His name, his story, his weight. They were hidden, tucked away like a letter in a locked drawer. But secrets don't stay buried forever. Not when someone like Emily refuses to look away. Not when a single loaf of bread becomes a lifeline, a beacon, a promise that someone somewhere still cares. The Colonel's words, when they come, will change everything. They'll give the old man a name, a past, a reason for the shadows in his eyes. They'll connect Emily's small act to a larger story. One of lost honor, and a debt that can never be repaid, but can be remembered. And they'll show her in ways she never imagined that the bags she left on the bench were never just bread. They were hopeful. They were home. They were humanity folded into a napkin and left for a stranger who needed it more than she could ever know. The bakery is a cocoon of warmth, but the air feels charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Emily. Rivera sits across from Colonel James Hargrove, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes searching his face for answers. The table between them is small, cluttered with the remnants of her morning empty coffee cups, a dusting of flour, a napkin folded into a perfect square. Outside the SUVs wait their dark shapes cutting through the dawn's soft glow. The bench across the street is empty, but the bag Emily left this morning is gone along with the others. She doesn't know why. She doesn't know anything, not yet. Hargrove clears his throat, his fingers brushing the edge of his cap. Rivera. He begins, his voice steady but heavy. The man you've been leaving food for. He wasn't just anyone. He pauses, as if weighing the words, as if they carry a burden. He's not sure she's ready to share. Emily leans forward, her breath shallow, her heart a quiet drum. His name was John Torres, Hargrove says, and he was the father of Sergeant Mateo Torres, a soldier who gave his life for this country. The name lands like a stone in still water, sending ripples through Emily's chest. John Torres. She repeats it silently, tasting the weight of it, the reality of it. For 10 days he was the old man on the bench, a stranger with tired eyes and trembling hands. Now he has a name, a story, a son. She wants to ask 100 questions. Where is he? Why was he here? What happened? But her voice is trapped, caught in the ache of knowing he's gone. Hargrove reaches into his jacket and pulls out an envelope, its edges worn, its surface stained with time. He slides it across the table, careful, almost reverent. He left this, he says. For you. Emily stares at the envelope, her fingers hovering above it. Her name is written on the front, in a shaky, deliberate hand. Emily. No last name, no address, just her singled out by a man she never spoke to. She lifts at the paper, light but heavy with meaning, and opens it slowly, as if it might break. Inside is a single sheet folded once and a small photograph. Its colors faded, but its details sharp. She sets the photograph aside and unfolds the letter, her hands trembling. Now her eyes scanning the words that will change everything. The letter is short, but every word is a wound, a gift, a memory. Emily reads it silently, her lips moving slightly as if to hold each syllable close. Emily, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I'll have the courage to leave it. But I need you to know what you've done. My name is John Torres, though you never asked. For years I've been a ghost carrying a grief too heavy for one man. My son Mateo was my light, my pride, my reason. When he died, a part of me died too. I stopped being a father, a man, a person. I was just there, waiting for the world to forget me. Then you came. A bag of bread, a cup of coffee, a napkin with no words. You didn't ask my name. You didn't ask about my story. You just saw me. For the first time in years I felt human. Not because of the food, though it warmed me. Because of you. Because you reminded me that the world still has kindness, that it hasn't forgotten how to care. I kept every napkin you left. They're in my bag, folded like pieces of a life I thought I'd lost. I don't have much to give you, but I have this. My thanks, my heart, my hope that you never stop being who you are. You've given me more than bread. Emily, you've given me a reason to believe again. Yours, John. Emily's vision blurs, tears falling onto the letter, smudging the ink. She reads it again, then again, each time finding new weight in the words, I kept every napkin. She thinks of the bags, the coffee, the morning she crossed the street with nothing but instinct to guide her. She thinks of his nod, his trembling hands, the look in his eyes that day, the one that said everything. She presses the letter to her chest as if to hold him there, to keep him from being gone. Hargrove watches her, his face soft now, no longer the soldier but the man. John passed. 2 days ago, he says quietly. Heart failure in his sleep. He was at a shelter, one we'd been trying to get him to for months. He wouldn't go, not until recently. We think it was because of you. Because he felt safe enough to rest. Emily's breath catches a sob breaking free. She doesn't try to hide it. She lets the tears come. Lets the grief and gratitude mix, because this is what it means to care. This is what it means to see someone to be seen in return. She looks at the photograph now, her fingers tracing its edges. It's John, younger, standing beside a young man in a Marine uniform. Matteo. They're smiling, their arms around each other. The sky behind them, an endless blue. She sees John's eyes, the same ones she knew, but brighter, unburdened. She sees Matteo's pride, his strength, his life. And she understands in a way that hurts and heals at once, that her bread fed more than a man. It fed a father, a memory, a love that never faded. The bakery feels different after Hargrove leaves. The SUVs are gone, the street quiet again, but the air hums with something new. Emily sits at the table, the letter and photograph in front of her, her hands still. She doesn't bake, not yet. She doesn't move. She just sits, letting John's words settle into her, letting his story become part of hers. The bell chimes occasionally, customers coming and going, but she barely notices. Her world is the letter, the photograph, the bench across the street. By afternoon, the news spreads. Santa Isabel is small, and secrets don't stay secret for long. The florist, wiping her windows, hears it from a customer. The delivery driver unloading crates catches a fragment of the story. The teenagers scrolling their phones see a post, not a cruel one this time, but a quiet one shared by someone who was at the shelter. The baker on Main Street fed a hero's father. She didn't know who he was. She just cared. The post spreads, not viral, not loud, but steady like a heartbeat. People start coming to the bakery. Not just for bread, but for her. Mrs. Delgado, who hasn't been in since the Facebook post, brings a bouquet of roses. Her eyes wet. "You did good, mija," she says, her voice thick. Mr. Perez, usually gruff, lingers at the counter telling Emily about his brother, a Michael Johnson who never came home. "You gave that man dignity," he says, his hands shaking as he takes his croissant. "Strangers come too. People Emily has never seen leaving notes. Small gifts, stories of their own. A woman whose son is deployed leaves a folded flag. No words, just a look that says everything. Michael Johnson, his medals pinned to his jacket, buys a loaf and says, "You honored him. You honored all of us." Emily doesn't know how to respond. She's not used to this attention, gratitude, the weight of being seen. She smiles, nods, says thank you. But inside she's still with John, still holding his letter, still crossing the street in her mind. She doesn't feel like a hero. She feels like a baker, a daughter, a woman who did what felt right. But the town sees her differently now. The whispers have changed. The stares are soft, not sharp. And the bench, once a place of absence, becomes a kind of altar, a place where people leave flowers, notes, candles that flicker in the evening breeze. That night, Emily opens her mother's journal again. She reads the entry about the soldier, the one who shook with shame and gratitude. She reads another further back about a child who came to the bakery during the war, hungry and alone. Elena gave her bread a smile, a moment of safety. "It's not the bread that matters," Elena wrote. "It's the giving. It's knowing that someone somewhere needs you to see them." Emily closes the journal, her fingers lingering on the cover. She thinks of her mother, of John, of the napkins he kept. She thinks of the bench, the bags, the mornings that felt so small but were so big. She doesn't sleep. Instead, she goes downstairs, lights the oven and bakes. Not for the bench, not for John, but for herself, for the town, for the people who are starting to see her, the way she saw him. She kneads dough, her hands, sure and steady, her heart full and heavy. The bakery fills with the scent of bread, of warmth of home. And when the first loaf comes out golden and perfect, she cries not for loss, but for the beauty of it, for the way a single act can ripple outward, touching lives she'll never know. The next morning, Emily crosses the street one last time. She carries a bag, but it's different now. Inside is a single napkin folded carefully with a message in her mother's words. No one becomes poorer by sharing bread. She sets it on the bench, her fingers brushing the wood, her eyes on the horizon. The town is waking up, the lamppost flickering, the stray dog back in its spot. She doesn't expect John to return. She doesn't expect anything, but she leaves the napkin because that's what she does. She gives. She sees. She cares. Back at the bakery, the bell chimes and a new face steps inside. A girl, maybe 16, with eyes that carry too much weight for her age. She hesitates, then says, My dad's overseas. I heard about what you did. I wanted to say thank you. Emily smiles, the kind of smile that says, I see you. She hands the girl a loaf warm from the oven and says, come back tomorrow. The girl nods, her eyes bright, and leaves the bag cradled in her arms. The bakery hums with life now, its warmth spilling out into the streets of Santa Isabel. The scent of fresh bread weaves through the air, mingling with the soft chatter of customers and the occasional chime of the bell above the door. Emily Rivera moves behind the counter, her hands steady, her apron dusted with flour. She's still the baker, still the woman who crosses the street each morning. But she's something more now. A quiet beacon, a reminder that kindness, even the smallest kind, can change the world. The bench across the street is no longer empty. It's a gathering place adorned with flowers, notes, and flickering candles that glow like stars against the dusk. John Torres is gone, but his presence lingers, carried in the hearts of those who heard his story, who felt its weight. Emily doesn't read the letter anymore. She doesn't need to. John's words are part of her now, woven into the rhythm of her days, the kneading of her dough, the folding of her napkins. You reminded me that the world still has kindness. She carries that truth like a light, letting it guide her through the moments when the world feels heavy and the world is watching. Santa Isabel! Once a town of whispers and judgment has softened. The florist no longer shakes her head. The delivery driver offers a nod instead of a smirk. The teenagers, their phones still glowing, post stories of hope, now not mockery. Emily's act. 10 bags, 10 mornings, 10 napkins has become a story. The town tells itself a story it needs. The days after the Colonel's visit are a blur of faces and voices. The bakery is never empty. People come not just for bread, but for connection, for a chance to share their own stories. Margaret Anderson, her hands wrinkled as old paper tells Emily about her husband, a Michael Johnson, who loved sourdough. He'd have liked you, she says, her voice cracking. A young man, his eyes shadowed, buys a loaf and whispers, my brother's in Afghanistan. I don't know if he's coming back. Emily listens, her hands still, her heart open. She doesn't have answers, but she has bread. She has time. She has a way of seeing people that makes them feel less alone. One afternoon, a new letter arrives. It's not from John, but from his granddaughter Sophie, who lives in a city Emily has never seen. The envelope is crisp, the handwriting careful, as if each letter was chosen with care. Emily opens it at the counter, her fingers trembling, the bakery quiet around her. The letter is long, but its heart is simple. Dear Ms. Rivera, my name is Sophie Torres. John was my grandfather. I never knew how much he was hurting until I read his letter to you. He didn't talk about my dad, Mateo, not after he died. It was too hard, but he kept your napkins. All of them. They were in a box under his bed, folded like they were treasures. He wrote notes on some little things like, she smiled today, or coffee was warm. I think you were his reason to keep going even when he didn't want to. I'm coming to Santa Isabel next week. I want to meet you, to thank you, to see the bench where my grandfather found hope again. You didn't just feed him. You gave him back to us. Even for a little while. I don't know how to repay you, but I'm bringing something he wanted you to have. It's small, but it's his. With all my heart, Sophie. Emily folds the letter carefully. Her eyes wet, but her smile steady. She thinks of the napkins, of John's hands folding them, of the box under his bed where he kept her kindness close. She thinks of Sophie, a girl she's never met, carrying her grandfather's love across miles and years. And she knows with a certainty that feels like her mother's voice that this is what it means to share bread. Not just food, but time. Heart, humanity. Not just for one person, but for a family. A town, a world that's hungrier than it knows. Sophie arrives on a Tuesday when the sky is clear and the air smells of autumn. She's young, barely 20, with John's eyes and a quiet strength that fills the bakery the moment she steps inside. Emily knows her instantly, not from a photograph, but from the way she carries herself, like someone who's known loss, but chooses hope. The customers fall silent, sensing something sacred in the moment. Sophie smiles, a small nervous thing, and says, you're Emily. Emily nods, wiping her hands on her apron. And you're Sophie. They don't hug. Not yet. They stand there, two women bound by a man neither will see again. Their eyes holding a conversation. Words can't touch. Sophie reaches into her bag and pulls out a small velvet pouch. She opens it, revealing a coin heavy and worn, its surface etched with words. Emily can't read from a distance. Sophie places it in Emily's hand, her fingers warm, her voice soft. "This was my dad's," she says, "a challenge coin from his unit. It says Semper Fidelis, never forgotten. Grandpa wanted you to have it. He said you honored my dad's memory, even without knowing it. He said you're the kind of person the world needs more of." Emily turns the coin over her thumb, tracing the words. Semper Fidelis, never forgotten. She thinks of John, of Matteo, of the napkins and the bench, and the mornings that felt so small but were so big. She thinks of her mother, of the journal of the soldier who shook with gratitude. She thinks of the girl from last week, the one whose father is overseas, and the promise she made to come back. And she feels it, a connection, a thread that runs through all of them, tying loss to love, grief to healing. One small act to 1,000 lives. "Thank you, Emily," says her voice barely above a whisper. Sophie nods, her eyes bright, and this time, they hug, a brief, fierce embrace that says everything left unsaid. Sophie stays for an hour, sharing stories of her grandfather, her father, the family. Emily never knew but feels tied to now. When she leaves, she takes a loaf of bread, a napkin folded inside, and a promise to return. The next morning, Emily crosses the street, but not alone. Gustavo, the bakery's owner, walks with her. He's a quiet man, gruff but kind, who's watched Emily's journey from the sidelines. Today he carries a sign hand-painted, its words simple but bold. Bread for anyone who needs it. No questions, no shame. They hang it above the bench where the flowers and candles still glow, where John's memory lives. Gustavo doesn't say much, but his hand on Emily's shoulder says enough. "You started something, kid," he mutters, his voice thick. "Don't stop." Emily doesn't plan to. The bakery has become more than a bakery now. It's a haven, a place where people bring their hunger not just for food, but for connection, for understanding, for a moment of being seen. The girl whose father is overseas comes back bringing a friend whose brother is struggling. Michael Johnson. His medals tucked away, sits at the counter and talks for hours, his voice steady for the first time in years. Strangers leave notes not just for Emily, but for each other, messages of hope, gratitude, resilience. The bench is never empty now, not because of bags, but because of people sitting talking. Remembering, Emily keeps the coin on the counter next to her mother's journal, a quiet reminder of John Matteo and the weight of kindness. She bakes, she listens, she crosses the street. She doesn't call herself a hero. She doesn't think of herself as special. She's just Emily the baker, the daughter, the woman who saw a man on a bench and refused to look away. But to Santa Isabel, to Sophie, to the people whose lives she's touched, she's something more. She's proof that the world still has room for goodness, that a single act can ripple outward, healing wounds no one else can see. One evening, as the sun dips low and the bakery glows with golden light, a new customer steps inside. She's young, maybe 17, her eyes carrying the weight of a story Emily recognizes. She hesitates, then says, "My dad's in the army. He's been gone a year. I heard about you, about the man you helped. I needed to be here." Emily smiles, the kind of smile that says, "I see you." She hands the girl a loaf warm from the oven and says, "Sit. Tell me about him." The girl sits, the bread cradled in her hands, and talks. She talks about her father, about the letters he sends, about the fear that keeps her awake at night. Emily listens, her hands still, her heart open. When the girl leaves, her steps are lighter, her eyes brighter. She takes a napkin with her folded carefully, with Emily's handwriting. "You're not alone." That night, Emily stands at the window looking out at the bench. The candles flicker, the flowers sway in the breeze, the sign glows under the lampost's light. She thinks of John, of his letter, of the napkins he kept. She thinks of Sophie, of the coin of Semper Fidelis. She thinks of her mother, of the journal of the truth, that no one becomes poorer by sharing bread. And she knows with a certainty that feels like home that this is enough. Not fame, not recognition, not even thanks. Just this one person, one moment, one loaf at a time. The story of Emily Rivera doesn't end here because kindness doesn't end. It ripples, it grows, it heals. It lives in the bench, in the bakery, in the hearts of those who pass through Santa Isabel and carry her story with them. It lives in the girl who found comfort in the Michael Johnson, who found peace in the town that learned to see. It lives in you, listening now, wondering what small act you might do, what bench you might cross, what napkin you might fold. This is the truth. John Torres left behind the truth Emily carries forward, that the world is hungry not just for food, but for hope, for connection, for someone to say, I see you. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be big to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is a loaf of bread, a cup of coffee, a napkin, with no words. Sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to look away to remind the world what it means to be human. So go find your bench, fold your napkin, share your bread, and know that somewhere in ways you may never see, you're changing a life, a heart, a world. Because kindness, the quiet kind, is the loudest thing of all.